In this video, we're going to do an example involving the instant runoff method of voting. So again, we're given this preference schedule, and we can go ahead and determine the total number of voters. So 14 plus 11, that gives us 25, plus 10 gives us 35, 35 plus 9 gives us 44, and then we have plus 3, so 47 voters altogether. So with the instant runoff method, we first look to see if anybody has a majority of the votes, right? So in this case, the total number of voters is 47. So what would a majority be? Well, a majority would be just over half. So that would be 24 votes. And nobody has 24, and when we're looking at the votes, we're looking at the first choice votes. We can ask, does anybody have 24 first choice votes? And no candidate satisfies that condition. So we then look at the number of first choice votes, and it looks a lot like the plurality method. So for each candidate, we simply determine the number of first choice votes that they have. Well, what about A? Well, if we look across the first choice row, we see that 3 people had A as their first choice, so A has 3 votes. Now if we look at B, we see that B shows up twice. There's 11 people that list B as their first choice, but then later in the 4th column, there's 9 people that list B as their first choice as well. So altogether, there are actually 20 individuals, 20 voters, who list B as their first choice. What about C? Well, there are 10 individuals who list C as their first choice, and then finally there are 14 individuals that list D as their first choice. Okay, so that was the first round. So the first round of instant runoff looks exactly like the plurality method. We only look at first choice votes, and we simply tally them together and see what's happening. Now, as again, notice nobody has a majority of the votes, so that means we need to proceed to the second round. And now what we do is we look at, among all the candidates, we eliminate the one that had the fewest number of first choice votes in the first round. So that would be A, right? A had only 3 first choice votes, so they obviously have the fewest, so we eliminate A. The other candidates are still in the race. Now the only thing is, there were 3 voters that voted for A as their first choice. Those 3 voters now need to change their mind. But we already know what they prefer. Those 3 voters, if we look at that very last column, they had A as their first choice, C as their second choice, D as their third choice, and B as their 4th choice. And so if A were to be taken out of the race, all those 3 people would then say, oh, well, we can't get our first choice. It's no longer an option, so we're now going to vote for our second choice. Namely, everybody's going to move up. Their second choice, C, is now going to become their first choice. And their third choice, D, is going to become their second choice. And their 4th choice, B, is going to become their third choice. Namely, once A is eliminated, all the other candidates move up. So those 3 individuals that listed A as their first choice, they will now transfer their first choice votes to C. So C is going to pick up an additional 3 votes. So C originally had 10 votes, but now it's going to pick up an additional 3, or 13. What about B? Well, B stays the same, right? B originally had 20 votes, and that's it. B hasn't received any other votes because the only thing that happened was A got eliminated. So those 3 individuals that listed A as their first choice, now they're transmitting all their votes to C, and that's it. Nobody else is picking up any additional votes. So B still has 20 votes, and D still has 14. Okay, so now we look and say, does anybody have a majority? Does anybody have 24 votes or higher? No, they don't. So we go on to the 3rd round. Same idea. We look at the candidate with the fewest number of first choice votes in the 2nd round, and we eliminate them. Well, that is candidate C. They only have 13 votes. D has 14 and B has 20. So we eliminate C. So what's going to happen now? Well, now in the third round, there's only two candidates left, B and D. But those 13 individuals who in the second round were all voting for C, now that C is eliminated, they need to transfer their votes to either B or D. So let's go back up. So we saw at the end of the first round, A got eliminated, right? So we can make sure we cross out A here. But now we just saw C got eliminated. So let's do that in green. Actually, let's do that in green. So C gets eliminated. So the point is, we go through and we say, okay, well, there were 13 people that were voting for C as their first choice. Those 13 people came in two groups. There was a group of 10, that was the third column, and there was a group of 3, that was the fifth column. And now those people need to vote for somebody new, right? So if we look at the people in column 10 here, and we go down, we see right here, their first choice, C, was eliminated. So now they're going to transfer all their votes to their second choice, which is D, who is still in the race. So D, as of round 2, had 14 votes, but D is now going to pick up an additional 10 votes. And that is because the 10 of the individuals who listed C as their first choice, now that C is eliminated, they have D as their second choice, and so they're going to transfer their loyalty to D. But there were another 3 individuals who listed C as their first choice, right? The very last column, those 3 individuals originally had A as their first choice, but A got eliminated. They then transferred their loyalty to C, but then C got eliminated. So there's only 2 options left. So now their next choice is D, right? B and D are the only options left, but they prefer D to B, and so they're going to transfer their votes to D. So D is going to pick up another 3 votes. So D had the 14 votes from the second round. It's going to pick up an additional 10 votes and an additional 3 votes. B has not picked up any additional votes. B still has the same number of votes it had before, 20. So looking at those numbers, B has 20, and D has what? It has 24 plus 3, 27 votes. 27 is clearly the larger of the 2 numbers, and it also is the majority. So in fact, then D is the winner of the instant runoff. And so if we had not had a winner at that case, we would just proceed to a 4th round, and if necessary, a 5th round, and so on, and we would keep on going, each time eliminating the candidate with the fewest number of votes for that round and transferring the votes from the other candidates. In this case, it took 3 rounds, and we got D as the winner.